Welcome to InvestorStream for the first time. Sipa Resources has been incredibly active of late as it progresses exploration programs across multiple projects in Western Australia. In this market, we're finding a lot of small cap explorers are struggling to advance projects. Meanwhile, your team at Sipa appear to be firing on all cylinders. What do you put that down to?
Thanks, Alex, for having me on. Yeah, we are really busy, and there's a few, key reasons that we are able to be busy. A couple of those relate to our excellent JVs. So we've got a really great JV with Rio Tinto Exploration up in the Patterson. So we've got the support of a big brother, if you like, and also another JV with Buru Energy. So having great JV partners makes it possible to achieve a lot because you've got their support behind you. The other thing is too, the team here at Sipa is very experienced in working in Western Australia. Myself, my exploration manager, our geologists, our board. I guess that and the relationships that we have, we can bring to the party when it comes to coordinating activities and so on is super helpful. I recently went to Diggers and Dealers. I got a lift to Diggers from Perth with one drilling company. I got a lift back with another drilling company. I've been working with these guys for a long time. And so it makes it a lot easier when you can ring people up and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you fit us in between project A and project B that you already got happening? And staying in touch with these guys. So the relationships really help a lot. And we do a lot of planning. We've been planning for this year's work for a year. So getting all the approvals in place, booking the equipment and so on, and taking the time to get that all set up, pays dividends when it comes to getting boots on the ground.
Thanks, Pip. Your portfolio spans varied commodities, including gold and base metals. For those unfamiliar with the company, can you talk us through your overall strategy?
Yeah, sure. Look, we've got a pretty bread and butter type exploration strategy. We stick to the gold and base metals, as you mentioned, but while at the same time always keeping our eye open, for other minerals that might appear opportunistically. So, for example, at Skeleton Rocks, we pegged that as a gold and nickel copper kind of project. But we've got some great lithium targets that have been generated out of the work that we've done so far. So we'll naturally progress those, but the primary focus of the project remains gold and nickel copper. And that goes for all of the projects that we've got. We stick to these kind of bread and butter things, commodities that are typically LME traded, and then there's gold, obviously. It's a simple message for investors rather than kind of rushing off to chase another commodity that might be flavour of the month or flavour of the next year or so. We just stick to those simple commodities there. But, lithium, fantastic commodity to be in at the moment. If we discover some lithium, fantastic, certainly not going to be no complaints. As well as the commodity focus, we also have a strategy of taking large ground positions with good technical kind of basis behind the projects. Something that will appeal to major companies if we actually happen to strike some mineralisation, set ourselves up for future JV opportunities. And that, for example, Patterson North is a great example of that. Barbed Wire Terrace, where we've got a JV with Buru Energy, is another example. Wolf Basin, it's a big sediment-hosted base metals target there. That would be a great JV opportunity for a major, should we get onto some mineralisation there. General strategy is to have a mixture of JVs, 100% owned ground, and progress them in a very systematic, technically robust fashion.
Okay, great. So let's delve a bit deeper into the portfolio. You mentioned the Patterson North project there, which I understand has been your major operational focus in joint venture with Rio Tinto Exploration. So let's start there. What's the latest?
Yeah, sure. So we've been drilling there since late June, and that drill program is looking like wrapping up in the next week or so. And, the first batch of samples are at the lab. Subsequent batches of samples will end up in the lab not too distant future. And at the same time as the drilling, we undertook a very extensive airborne geophysical survey, a SkyTEM it's called. It's airborne EM. And that allows us to look through the cover sequences at the basement up in the Patterson and hopefully identify conductors that, combined with other geophysical techniques such as magnetics and gradient array IP, there are other techniques we've been using. When you combine all those different images of the basement, that gives you new targets for drilling. So while we're drilling this year, we're preparing ourselves for drilling next year as well. So the information we're gathering now and have finished gathering with that SkyTEM survey will feed into targets for drilling in 2023. So the drilling, we've got the SkyTEM, and then the plan is to have a heritage survey, which is booked for mid-September. And so that'll again clear the ground ahead of next year's work. So we're just trying to do this year's work and prepare for next year's all at the same time.
Thanks, Pip. So you also recently commenced a diamond drilling program at the Barbed Wire Terrace project, which, as you mentioned, is a JV with Buru Energy. I understand you're testing base metal targets along the southwestern margin of the Fitzroy Trough. Can you just tell us a bit more about the geology here, and why are you only testing one portion of what is a very significant landholding?
Yeah, sure. So on the geology side of things, on the other side of the Fitzroy Trough, there's outcropping rocks, the key one being the Pollara limestone, and that's the host to a number of base metal deposits, lead zinc deposits like Pollara, Kajubat, Wagon Pass, and so on that people may have already heard of. So what we're doing is we're looking for the same geology on the southwestern side of the trough, where it's actually obscured under cover. It has been shown that, the prospective horizons do exist along this feature. It's called the Barbed Wire Terrace. So terrace suggests, an elevated kind of horizon. So we've got on one side, on the kind of northeast side, we've got the rocks outcropping at surface, and on the southwest side, they're below the surface. But it's the same units, we believe, and in between is a great big trough. So we're trying to find basically the deposits that are found here, we're trying to find them over here. So the drilling, we're doing 4 drill holes, nominal depths of 500 metres. We've chosen that as a nominal depth basically because the economics are very important. Trying to extract a deposit that's deeper than 500 metres, we've kind of taken as a nominal cutoff of something that's going to be difficult to be economic unless it's, monstrously huge, of course. But there is, for example, there's a deposit that's known, Admiral Bay, to the west of us, and it's quite deep. It's around about the 1.3 kilometres below the surface, but it's huge. Now, that obviously, that's been known for a long time, hasn't been extracted. The depth is a big challenge. So we're targeting deposits that might exist at significantly shallower depth. So that's on the geology side of things. Getting back to your other question, so we've got a very large tenement package, as you mentioned, and it's all along the edge of this. Here's up in the northeast, that's the outcropping material with the known deposits, where we're testing in the southwest. We've got a position all along the boundary where that drops into the trough. We're testing approximately an 80-kilometre strike length of that with 4 very widely spaced holes. Initially to test, are the rocks that we think are there actually there for a start? And then are they mineralised? And we're looking in positions that you can tell from the geophysics, shows you that the rocks have been disrupted, that there's some potentially offsetting faults and some kind of complexity there, because mineralisation typically is located where there's structural complexity, there's folds, there's faults that have broken the rock up and allowed mineralising fluids to move into these rocks and deposit the minerals. So we're testing along this margin of the trough for these 4 holes, and these are the tenements that are granted. The other tenements that we've got further to the northwest, again in joint venture with Buru Energy, are not yet granted. And so they'll work their way through the process, and based on the results that we get from the current drilling program, we'll decide when and where we want to actually test those.
Pip, you've also advanced exploration initiatives at both Wolf Basin and Skeleton Rocks, which are wholly owned Sipa projects. I'd like to zero in on Skeleton Rocks, if I may, with drilling set to kick off later this quarter on a set of lithium targets. What's the strategy for drilling this set of targets, and what would constitute a successful campaign in your eyes?
Yeah, sure. So Skeleton Rocks, as I mentioned earlier, we originally pegged as a gold, nickel, copper project, but mindful that, there could be the potential for other minerals there. We had some EIS-funded drilling that we undertook back in February, March this year, and the idea there was basically to get samples of the basement in an area where no drilling had previously been completed, and as a result, there's no knowledge of what the rocks were. You could clearly see on the magnetics that there's some buried greenstones there, but there were no samples of the material and no real understanding of the geology. So we completed that program, wide-spaced air core, and defined the edges of the greenstone belt, and as well managed to return some results suggesting the potential for lithium-bearing pegmatites. So we've got some of the key pathfinder elements that you see in lithium-bearing pegmatites, being lithium, obviously, but also cesium and rubidium. We're seeing very focused anomalies in those elements. So our strategy is to go back and drill deeper holes underneath the previous air core drilling. That'll really test those anomalies to see if there is indeed lithium-bearing pegmatites there. So we've got the anomaly. It's very tightly focused. One of the features of geochemical anomalies around lithium-bearing pegmatites is that they don't disperse very far. So typically tends to maybe 150 metres at most, and that's based on scientific studies of other pegmatites around the world. So the great thing about this kind of target, it's not a huge halo you've got to drill forever trying to locate its source. It's quite focused. And so we just got Program of Works approval to drill those deeper RC holes, testing those targets. And as you mentioned, the goal is to do that within the current quarter.
And finally, Pip, Sipa is particularly busy at the moment, as we mentioned, with a number of projects on the go. Are there one or two catalysts that investors should be able to look out for, which you think could either really deliver a re-rating for the stock or something that maybe the market could be missing at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Look, we are an exploration company, so it's all about exploration success. So what we're doing, we've got targets that have got very solid scientific basis behind them, and we're testing them as efficiently as possible. So the re-rating will come with a discovery or the edges of a discovery, so to speak. And that could come from the results at Patterson North, results from barbed wire terrace drilling, results from skeleton rocks drilling, and also even the soil sampling program we've got out at Wolf Basin at the moment. There's a lot of opportunities for discovery success. Basically, we've got a lot of very solid projects and opportunities for discoveries at all of them, and lots of results flowing in over the next 6 months as all of the drilling and the sampling moves its way through the laboratory.
Thanks, Pip. Really appreciate your time today. All the best for your many and varied exploration initiatives, and look forward to chatting again soon. Thanks for joining me.
Good on you. Thanks very much.